It always starts with one question. One question that hits harder than any headline, any rumor, any PR crisis. What would you do if the person you trusted most suddenly became the biggest threat to your reputation, your legacy, your sanity? But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. That was the question Prince Harry found himself facing on a night he would never forget. A night when the walls of their Montecito mansion felt too tight, too suffocating, too silent. A night when Meghan Markle's past, a past she swore was irrelevant, exaggerated, or maliciously fabricated, roared back to life like a ghost that refused to stay buried. And Harry, the man who had defended her against the world, felt something crack inside him. Not anger at first, not even betrayal. Something worse. Recognition. Because deep down, he knew this moment was coming. He knew the truth has a way of crawling out from under the heaviest stones, no matter how hard someone tries to hide it. And on this night, the stone rolled. Ask yourself, what happens when the one scandal you hoped the world would forget comes back louder, bigger, and sharper than ever? What happens when the internet starts whispering again? When royal insiders start dropping cryptic hints? When Hollywood quietly pulls back, pretending they never embraced you? What happens when the secret file lands in Prince Harry's hands? And what happens when he reads it? Tonight's chapter begins long before the words, "I want a divorce," were ever spoken. It begins with a vibration, a message, a leak. And Meghan knew instantly, this wasn't just another gossip storm. This wasn't just another hit piece or conspiracy theory or jealous whisper from the UK tabloids. No, this was the one story she couldn't spin, the one headline she couldn't drown, the one past she couldn't outrun, the one she prayed Harry would never see. But he did, and that changed everything. Before we get into the confrontation, before we reach the moment Harry said those 4 devastating words, we need to ask the most important question. Why did this story explode now? Why did Meghan's alleged yacht girl past suddenly resurface with new names, new details, new documents? Why did a swarm of online investigators, royal trackers, and Hollywood insiders suddenly converge at the exact same moment? It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't timing. It wasn't an algorithm glitch. It was pressure. Pressure that had been building for months, maybe years. Pressure from royal advisors who felt betrayed. Pressure from ex-staff members who felt ignored. Pressure from Meghan's former associates who felt erased from the narrative she built. Someone wanted this truth out. Someone wanted Harry to see it. Someone wanted the marriage shaken. And they got everything they wanted. But here's the twist. The person who delivered the leak wasn't an enemy. It wasn't the British press. It wasn't some anonymous troll account. It wasn't a disgruntled Hollywood producer. It was someone much closer, much quieter. Someone Harry trusted enough to pick up the phone without hesitation. Someone who said, in a voice colder than ice, "You need to look at this. Now." But let's slow down. Slow just enough to understand the emotional weight hanging in the air that night. Picture Harry, a man who had built his entire adult life around 2 core beliefs. Protect Meghan. Protect their family. He walked away from the crown, from duty, from tradition, all for her. He defended her through every interview, every documentary, every scandal. So why was he suddenly pulling back? Why was he suddenly quiet, distant, detached? Why did Meghan notice that his expressions changed whenever her phone buzzed? Why did his silence become more dangerous than his anger? Silence is powerful. Silence is telling. Silence is the prelude to truth. Harry's silence that night wasn't about Meghan's past. Not entirely. It was about something much deeper. It was about realizing that for the first time, he might not trust the woman he gave everything up for. And that, more than any scandal, was the breaking point. But how did we get here? How did a marriage that once fascinated the world, a modern fairy tale promising rebellion, freedom, and love, become a quiet battleground of secrets and suspicion? Let's rewind to the morning the first leak appeared. A Twitter thread. Anonymous. Harmless looking. 7 posts long. The first tweet. Funny how certain pasts never stay buried. The second tweet. Hollywood remembers everything. The third tweet. A blurred photo. A yacht. A woman who looked uncannily like Meghan. It could have passed as coincidence, except it didn't stop. Within hours, TikTok detectives were stitching old footage. Instagram accounts were posting side-by-sides. Bloggers were writing long breakdowns. Former yacht guests chimed in anonymously. And within 24 hours, one high-profile Hollywood insider dropped a sentence that detonated like a bomb. This isn't new. Harry already knows. Except he didn't. That was the moment Meghan's composure cracked. The moment her calm mask slipped. The moment she rushed upstairs, locked the door, and made 3 frantic phone calls, all of which went unanswered. The moment she realized she no longer controlled the narrative. But here is where things get even more complicated. Meghan always assumed her biggest vulnerability was the public, or the tabloids, or royal commentators. But it wasn't any of them. Her biggest vulnerability was Harry. Because once Harry began to question, everything changed. Once Harry started pulling at loose threads, everything unraveled. Once Harry realized the file in his hands lined up with stories he had previously dismissed, Meghan lost her grip. And that is precisely why this moment matters now more than ever. This isn't a recycled scandal. This isn't a typical celebrity expose. This isn't a petty feud or a sensational rumor. This is a turning point. A moment where Harry saw something he couldn't unsee. Meghan faced something she couldn't deny. The palace prepared for something they couldn't ignore. And Hollywood whispered something they never thought they would say. She's done. But here's the part that nobody saw coming. Harry wasn't angry when he confronted her. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't upset. He was calm. Almost too calm. The kind of calm that makes you realize the decision has already been made. That the conversation is no longer a debate, but a declaration. And when Harry finally said the words Meghan had laughed off just months earlier, everything inside her froze. I want a divorce. Not in anger. Not in panic. Not in theatrics. Just simple. Cold. Final. But before we get to that moment, before we break apart the confrontation that will shape the rest of this story, you need to understand the final piece of the puzzle. Meghan wasn't blindsided because of the leak. She was blindsided because she finally understood who leaked it. And why? Someone she underestimated. Someone she believed she had under control. Someone who knew exactly how to hit her where it hurt most. And when Meghan realized who had turned against her, everything inside her shifted. Everything. Because the one person she thought would always have her back no longer did. And that is where our introduction ends. Right at the edge. Right at the moment the truth begins to unravel in a way that neither Meghan nor Harry can stop. But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. It began with a phone call Harry was never supposed to receive. A simple ring. A vibration on the nightstand. An unknown number flashing across the screen. He almost didn't answer. Not because he was avoiding anyone, but because, for the first time in his life, he was tired of being told things he didn't want to hear. But something in his gut told him, pick it up. And when he did, everything changed. A voice he recognized instantly came through the speaker. Sharp. Steady. Calculated. We need to talk. Privately. Harry froze. Not because the voice was threatening, but because it carried a tone he had never heard before. Not from this person, not in this context, not with this gravity. A tone that said, the truth is coming. Is everything okay? Harry asked, already knowing the answer. No. And you need to listen carefully. There's something you must see. Tell me, when someone opens a conversation like that, how do you breathe normally afterward? How do you sit? How do you think? Harry walked outside onto the balcony, the cool California air brushing against his skin, grounding him just enough to process what was happening. I'm sending you a file, the voice continued. Do not share it. Do not ask questions yet. Just read. Harry didn't respond. Couldn't respond. Because the tone, the urgency, the finality, told him he was about to step into a version of reality he wasn't prepared for. 5 minutes later, the file arrived. A single PDF. Untitled. Unlabeled. Encrypted. Harry hesitated before opening it. Not because he was afraid of what was inside, but because he already suspected the moment he clicked, he wouldn't be able to unsee it. And he was right. The first page was simple. A blurry image of a yacht, tinted by sunset, the water glittering like diamonds. Harmless. Ordinary. Until he zoomed in. Until the faces became clearer. Until the woman in the center, head tilted, hair cascading, smile wide and confident, looked unmistakably like Meghan. Keyword, looked. Because Harry wasn't stupid. He knew deep fakes existed. He knew the internet was a breeding ground for manipulated images. He knew Meghan had faced years of false stories, twisted narratives, malicious gossip. He didn't jump to conclusions. He never did. But then he scrolled down. And that's when the real problem started. Because it wasn't just photos. It wasn't just gossip. It was names, dates, payments, correspondence, statements, cross-referenced accounts. Multiple versions of the same story, told years before Meghan met Harry. Too detailed to ignore. Too consistent to dismiss. And too dangerous to explain away. Harry felt his pulse thicken, his breath shorten. Not because he believed everything instantly, but because the patterns were unmistakable. And the most terrifying part? Some of the names connected to this story, he recognized. Not Hollywood names. Not producers. Not agents. Royal names. Advisors. Insiders. People who should have nothing to do with any of this. People who knew exactly how to wound Meghan and break Harry. But here's where the story gets even more complicated. Harry wasn't just shocked by what he saw. He was shocked by what he didn't see. There was no commentary in the file. No analysis. No suggestion. No manipulation. Just raw data. Raw evidence. Raw information. As if the person who leaked it wanted him to judge for himself. As if they trusted him to connect the dots. And yet, something didn't fit. Harry knew Meghan. At least he believed he did. He knew her desperation to escape her past. He knew the parts of her history she glossed over. He knew the stories she told him, the ones she chose not to tell him, and the ones she framed as misunderstandings, exaggerations, jealousy. But this was different. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't exaggerated. This wasn't a tabloid invention. This was coordinated, documented, archived. And the question hit Harry so hard it felt like someone punched the center of his chest. Why had Meghan never mentioned any of this? He wasn't angry yet. He wasn't even suspicious. He was confused. And confusion is often the first step toward clarity. He took a deep breath and called back the person who sent the file. "What am I looking at?" Harry asked. A long pause. Too long. "Evidence," the voice replied. "And before you say anything, no, I didn't dig this up. No, I didn't leak it. And no, I don't want anything from you. But you needed to see it. Before the world does." Harry felt his stomach drop. Before the world does. That meant the leak wasn't just a threat. It was a countdown. "Who else knows?" Harry asked, gripping the balcony railing so tightly his knuckles turned white. "More people than you realize," the voice answered. "And more are about to. Why are you telling me?" "Because you're the only one who deserves the truth before it becomes a spectacle." Harry closed his eyes. The word truth echoed in his head like a curse. Because truth, when delivered at the wrong time, can destroy everything in its path. "Does Meghan know?" he asked finally. "She will. But not from me." The call ended. And Harry stood alone, file in hand, future unknown. He didn't confront Meghan right away. He didn't storm into her office. He didn't accuse her. Instead, he watched her, really watched her. For the first time in a long time, he observed the small details, the ones he had ignored or dismissed or excused. Her sudden mood shifts, her panic at certain notifications, her obsessive scans of social media, her disappearing into the home office for hours at a time, her whispered conversations behind closed doors, her need to control everything, except herself. That night, while Meghan paced the kitchen, frantically texting someone, Harry sat quietly at the table, his eyes following her every move. And she knew. She knew instantly. She felt it before she saw it. The shift in his energy, the weight in his stare, the stillness in his body. She turned slowly, trying to look casual. "What?" she asked, forcing a weak smile. Harry didn't answer. Meghan felt her throat tighten. "Harry," she said again, voice trembling. "You're scaring me. What's going on?" But he still didn't speak. Because speaking would mean revealing that he knew. Speaking would mean acknowledging the storm. Speaking would mean crossing a line he couldn't uncross. Instead, he slid the tablet across the table. "Read," he said quietly. And Meghan froze. The blood drained from her face. Her eyes widened. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Because she recognized the file. Not the contents. The moment. The moment she always feared. The moment she always predicted. The moment she spent years trying to prevent. The moment Harry would look at her not as his wife, not as his partner, not as the mother of his children, but as a stranger. A stranger with secrets that refused to stay buried. "Harry," she whispered, shaking her head as though denial alone could erase the digital evidence glowing between them. It's not what you think. But she hadn't read a single page yet. And that one mistake, told Harry more than the file ever could. How would you know? Harry asked quietly. Meghan swallowed. Hard. Because she realized she had spoken too fast. Too defensively. Too knowingly. Harry leaned back. Arms crossed. Eyes sharp. Not angry. Not crying. Not yelling. Just watching. The kind of watching that reveals more than words ever could. I want you to read it, Harry said. And Meghan did. She skimmed the first page. Paused at the second. Stopped breathing at the third. And by the time she reached page 7, she was visibly shaking. When she finished, she closed the tablet slowly, almost ceremonially, as if hoping the motion itself could end the nightmare. But it didn't. It's fake, she said finally. It's all fabricated. It's a smear campaign. Someone's trying to destroy us. But Harry didn't react. He didn't defend her. He didn't reassure her. He didn't wipe her tears. He simply asked the question that shattered the room. Why didn't you tell me any of this before? Meghan blinked rapidly, trying to form a coherent answer. But every response she rehearsed over the years died on her tongue. Because Harry wasn't asking whether the file was real. He wasn't asking whether the photos were fake. He wasn't asking who leaked it. He was asking why she hid it. Why she lied by omission. Why she controlled his access to her past. Why she never gave him the full story. And Meghan realized, too late, that Harry wasn't reacting to the scandal. He was reacting to the deception, to the omissions, to the hidden timelines, to the inconsistencies that suddenly made horrible sense. Harry, she begged, voice cracking. It wasn't like that. I didn't tell you because I didn't think it mattered anymore. Harry looked at her for a long moment. A long, heavy, devastating moment. And then he whispered, "It matters now." Silence. A silence so deep it felt like the house itself stopped breathing. And then, slowly, Meghan reached for her phone. The reflex of someone whose instinct is always control. But Harry said 3 words that made her freeze. "Don't call anyone." Her hand dropped. Her face paled. Her voice died in her throat. Because Meghan Markle never froze. Never stalled. Never allowed herself to look cornered. But tonight, she did. And Harry saw it all. He saw the fear, the panic, the calculation, the realization, the guilt. And he knew. This was only the beginning. Because the file was not the worst part. No, not even close. The worst part was the second file. The one he hadn't shown her yet. The one that didn't just expose her past, but connected it to someone inside the royal family. Someone Meghan never wanted Harry to suspect. Someone whose involvement would break everything wide open. And Harry had already opened it. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Harry had seen scandals before. He had lived through them, breathed them, survived them. But he had never, not once, faced a revelation that made him question his entire marriage. Until now. And strangely, it wasn't the first file that broke him. It was the second. The file he hadn't shown Meghan. The file he wasn't supposed to have. The file that explained why this scandal resurfaced, and why now. But before Harry could decide what to do with it, something else happened. Something that transformed an already tense night into a psychological earthquake. Meghan realized someone close to her was involved. And that's when the real war began. But let's rewind a few minutes. Back to the moment after Meghan claimed the first file was fake, malicious, or taken out of context. Because in the seconds after she shut the tablet, Harry noticed something. Her fear wasn't about the contents. Her fear was about the source. She wasn't asking, how could this be out there? She was asking, who would send this to Harry? And that detail, that one instinctual slip, told Harry everything he needed to know. Meghan already suspected someone. She already had a name in mind. She already felt the shape of the betrayal. And Harry saw it reflected in her eyes. "What are you thinking?" he asked quietly. Meghan swallowed harshly. Her throat seemed to constrict with every breath. "Nothing," she whispered. "It's just, I know how these people operate." "These people," Harry repeated, his tone unreadable. Meghan nodded too quickly. "People who hate me. People who want to see me fail. People who want to break us apart." But Harry caught something in the phrasing. Us. Not her. Not their reputation. Not the truth. Us. As if the marriage was a brand. A package. A performance. Harry leaned back slowly in his chair, eyes narrowing, his mind working faster than Meghan realized. Who are you talking about? He asked. Meghan opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Then she shook her head. No, I'm not giving them more attention. That's how they win. But Harry wasn't letting it go. You have a name in mind. No, she insisted, voice rising. Meghan. Her chest heaved, eyes flickered, and she looked away, which told Harry more than any confession. Because Meghan Markle rarely looked away, especially not in a confrontation. Her power was eye contact. Her strength was control. Her weapon was confidence. But tonight, she was exposed. And it showed. Harry inhaled sharply. Then he said something he had never said to her before. You're hiding something else. Meghan froze mid-breath. What? She whispered, voice trembling despite her attempt to mask it. You're not shocked by the file? Harry continued. You're scared of who sent it. A long, suffocating silence. Then Meghan did something even stranger. She laughed. Not the charming laugh she used in interviews. Not the soft laugh she used when calming Harry down. A brittle, hollow laugh that sounded like glass cracking under pressure. You think someone I know sent that? She scoffed. Oh, Harry, come on. Don't let them twist your mind. But Harry didn't smile, didn't soften, didn't move. He just studied her face, her reaction, her performance. He had seen her lie in interviews before. Little lies, harmless ones, the kind everyone tells. But this was different. This was fear disguised as mockery. This was panic dressed up as sarcasm. And Harry was done pretending he couldn't see the difference. Then the moment that changed the night. Harry reached into his pocket and took out his phone. He opened the second file, the one he had been keeping to himself, and placed the device face down on the table. Meghan's eyes flickered toward it. Just once. But that single flicker was all Harry needed. You know what this is, he said quietly. Meghan's lips parted. Barely, but no sound came out. Because she did know. The second file wasn't about her. It was about the leak. About the orchestrator. About the person who wanted Harry to see the truth, not to destroy Meghan, but to save him. The second file contained a timeline of communication patterns, social media accounts, leaked messages, email fragments, and private discussions between individuals, discussions Meghan thought were deleted forever. Harry hadn't parsed all of it yet, but he understood enough. This wasn't an accident. This leak wasn't random. This was a coordinated reveal. And Meghan recognized the fingerprints immediately. She whispered something almost inaudible. No, it can't be. Not them. Harry didn't flinch. You know exactly who, he replied. Meghan shook her head violently, panic rising like a tide. No, Harry, listen to me. That person hates me. That person has always hated me. They would do anything to break us apart. And maybe, Harry said quietly, they're not the villain you made them out to be. Meghan's breath hitched. Because those words were the crack in the foundation she never expected. Harry had always taken her side, always defended her, always trusted her version of events. Until tonight. And suddenly Meghan realized that the price of hiding her past wasn't just media scrutiny. It was losing Harry's blind loyalty, his unquestioning faith, his unwavering defense. The silence stretched again, thicker this time, heavier, colder. Then Harry asked the question that sliced through the air like a blade. Why would they send me this? Meghan blinked rapidly. Her hands trembled. Because they want to destroy our marriage, she whispered. They're jealous. They're bitter. They've always been threatened by me. Harry leaned forward. What if they're trying to protect me? Meghan's face collapsed. Protect you. Those two words were the beginning of the unraveling. Because for the first time since their wedding, Harry wasn't seeing her as someone who needed protecting, but as someone he needed protecting from. And Meghan knew it. She saw the shift in his eyes. A shift she had never imagined possible. Harry, she choked. You cannot believe them over me. You can't seriously think. I think, Harry interrupted, that I don't know who to believe anymore. Meghan staggered backward like the words struck her physically. And then, for the first time all night, she stopped performing. Her voice broke. Her shoulders shook. She pressed a hand to her mouth and whispered, They're trying to ruin me. And what if, Harry said, voice steady, you ruined this yourself? Silence. A silence that echoed through the house. Meghan stared at him, horrified, betrayed, furious. A tornado of emotions swirling so violently that even she couldn't control her expression. Then the shift happened. A dangerous one. A strategic one. Meghan straightened her spine, wiped her tears, and transformed before Harry's eyes. The victim disappeared. The panicked woman melted, and in her place stood the strategist. Her voice steady, her tone controlled, her breathing even. "Harry," she said calmly, "listen to me very carefully." And that phrase, "very carefully," rubbed Harry the wrong way instantly. Because that wasn't the voice of a wife fighting to save her marriage. That was the voice of a woman trying to regain control. "You need to understand," she continued, stepping closer, "that the moment you start doubting me is the moment they win. They're doing this intentionally." "Who?" Harry cut in. Meghan hesitated, only for a second, but a second was enough. "You know who," she whispered. Harry locked eyes with her. "No," he said. "I want you to say the name." Meghan's jaw clenched. She shook her head slowly, refusing to speak. And that refusal, that absolute refusal, told Harry the truth. Because if she were innocent, she would have said the name. If she were innocent, she would expose the person sabotaging her. If she were innocent, she wouldn't be afraid of speaking. But Meghan was afraid, deeply afraid, of the truth, of the leak, of the person behind it. Harry leaned back, letting the silence fill the room. And Meghan broke. Not emotionally, strategically. She grabbed his hands desperately. "Harry, listen to me. Everything they're sending you is meant to manipulate you. None of it is real. You have to trust me. Please, don't let them put cracks between us." "Cracks?" he echoed. "Meghan, you hid an entire chapter of your life from me. It wasn't relevant. Then why did you hide it? It would have changed how you saw me. And this doesn't." Meghan stopped talking, because she realized something devastating. The file wasn't the threat. Harry's awakening was. The illusion of control she had maintained for years was gone, and she knew she couldn't get it back. Not tonight. Not after this. Her voice broke into a whisper. "Who sent the second file?" Harry stared at her. And for the first time, he didn't protect her from the truth. "You already know," he said quietly. Meghan closed her eyes. Pain, fear, recognition. She whispered the name so softly Harry almost didn't hear it. But he did. And when he nodded, Meghan's entire body went cold. Because the one person she always feared the most, the one person who knew exactly how to expose her, had finally chosen a side. And it wasn't hers. Before Meghan could speak, Harry pushed his chair back and stood. "We're not finished," he said. Meghan grabbed his arm. "Harry, please." But he pulled away gently, firmly, decisively. And that simple gesture hurt more than any accusation. It meant something had shifted inside him. Something fundamental. Something irreversible. While Meghan stood in the kitchen trembling, Harry walked into the living room, phone in hand, heart pounding. He had one more call to make. One that would confirm his worst fear. One that would expose the final layer of the truth. One that would change the course of their marriage forever. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. For Meghan, this wasn't just a scandal. This was the nightmare. The one she swore would never come true. The one she convinced herself could be managed, if not buried, then blurred beyond recognition. But it was no longer a whisper in the corners of the internet. It wasn't just cruel tabloid speculation or hateful trolls. No, it was out. It was organized. It was gaining traction, and it had been placed, deliberately, in the one set of hands that could do the most damage. Prince Harry's. She had built her new life around the idea that the past didn't matter. That reinvention was possible. That image could overwrite history. But now, her past was howling back with a vengeance. And worse, it was being believed. She could smell the storm. It had a scent, burnt ozone and betrayal. And it was everywhere. But Meghan wasn't the type to collapse. Not yet. Not in front of Harry. Not when there might still be time to stop the fallout before it consumed everything. So she did what she had always done when cornered. She recalibrated. Recalibrated her tone. Recalibrated her posture. Recalibrated the role she would now play. Not victim. Not villain. Something far more potent. Strategist in survival mode. But while Meghan was trying to regain composure in the kitchen, Harry was in the living room, dialing a number he never imagined calling again. A voice answered after the first ring. "You saw it?" the voice asked. Harry didn't respond immediately. His gaze was fixed on a photo on the mantel, his mother's portrait. She had always told him to trust his instincts. And his instincts were screaming. "I need to know," he said finally. "All of it." The voice was measured. "Prepared. Then brace yourself. Because the truth? The truth wasn't just messy. It was strategic. It was surgical. It was engineered for impact. And the more Harry listened, the more a sickening realization settled in the pit of his stomach. This wasn't a rogue leak. This wasn't random sabotage. This was a countdown. And someone had just hit 0. But while Harry was finally hearing the whole story, Meghan's panic was entering a new phase. A desperate phase. Because the moment she heard the edge in Harry's voice when he walked away, she knew. He wasn't just suspicious anymore. He was actively investigating. And that made him dangerous. He had contacts. He had access. And now he had motive. Meghan's instinct kicked in. Crisis mode. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in over a year. A crisis PR manager she'd sworn she'd never need again. It went to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. Third time. Still nothing. Her stomach twisted. Because suddenly, even they weren't picking up. And that told her something even worse. The industry was beginning to turn. And when Hollywood starts ghosting you before a scandal has even fully broken, it means someone bigger is pulling the strings. She opened her laptop. Typed frantically. Her inbox was full, but not in the way she expected. There were no panicked emails from publicists. No "let's fix this" subject lines. Just silence. Worse than silence. Unsubscribes. Cancellations. Withdrawals. Brand deals put on hold. Invitations being reassessed. All tied to the same whisper campaign. It's coming. The yacht girl story wasn't just back. It was weaponized. And the rumors were no longer whispers. They were roars. Anonymous Hollywood accounts had started posting old photos, shadows, and silhouettes. Yes, but with captions that left no ambiguity. She always knew it would come back. Some things you just can't PR away. Ask her who funded those early trips. The hashtags were spreading like wildfire. Hashtag yacht files. Hashtag before Harry. Hashtag Montecito mystery. Hashtag Markle exposure. Hashtag the real Meg. Meghan's hands shook as she slammed her laptop shut. And suddenly, she understood something she had never wanted to believe. This wasn't just a smear. This was a reckoning. Someone had been waiting. Waiting for the exact moment she would be most vulnerable, most visible, most isolated. And now, they were coming for everything. But who? Who had the motive? The access? The strategy? She had enemies, sure. But this was precision. And only one name made her blood run cold. She whispered it. The name Harry had demanded she say earlier. The one she had refused to say aloud. But now, she couldn't avoid it. Not anymore. Because deep down, she knew. It was Princess and, not out of spite, out of loyalty. To the crown. To William. To legacy. And had never liked her. Never trusted her. Never believed the reinvention. And in new things. Old things. Private things. Unconfirmed, undocumented, but true things. Things Meghan had long assumed would die in the shadows. And if and was involved, then this wasn't just about reputation anymore. It was about removal. Strategic removal. Because and didn't fight publicly. She fought quietly. With documents. With advisors. With whispers that turned into headlines days later. And Meghan knew. If and was behind the second file. She was already 10 steps ahead. Back in the living room, Harry was pacing. The voice on the other end of the phone was filling in gaps. Each detail more damning than the last. The documents surfaced 6 weeks ago, the voice said. We kept it contained. But someone intercepted a copy. That's the one you got. Who sent it to me? I can't say for sure. Can't or won't. A pause. Then, let's just say, the sender believes you deserve clarity. Before you're dragged into something worse. Harry stopped pacing. What could be worse? The voice didn't answer directly. Just this. Do you really think this ends with a file? Harry clenched his jaw. Because no. Of course it didn't end there. The file was the warning shot. The invitation to exit quietly. The signal that the walls were closing in. The only question left was, would he walk away before they caved in completely? He ended the call. Silence fell again. The kind of silence that hums with impending destruction. And Meghan, standing in the hallway, having heard none of it, tried one last move. She stepped into the living room. No phone. No tears. No tactics. Just her. Soft. Sincere. Disarmed. Harry, she said gently, I know what you're thinking. And I know how this must feel. But I love you. And I have never done anything to hurt you. He looked at her. Not with hate. Not with anger. But with something far more dangerous. Distance. Emotional distance. the kind that can't be undone once it's formed. You didn't need to hurt me, he said softly. You just needed to lie long enough that I stopped recognizing who you were. Meghan's breath caught in her throat. She stepped closer, but Harry didn't move. And then, for the first time, she asked the question. The one she hadn't wanted to say aloud. The one she had been avoiding since the file appeared. Are you going to leave me? Harry didn't answer immediately, because part of him didn't know the answer yet. But before he could speak, his phone buzzed. A name appeared on the screen. Not a contact, not a friend, a source who never reached out unless it was critical. Harry answered, listened, and his eyes widened. His expression changed, because what the voice on the other end said next shattered everything he thought he knew. There's another video. Harry went pale. Meghan's legs buckled. What video? She whispered. But Harry didn't answer, because he knew. This wasn't just a scandal anymore. It wasn't just a file. It was footage, proof, undeniable, unspinnable, unsurvivable. And if it reached the public, it wouldn't just end the marriage. It would erase everything they built. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. To Harry's silence was more terrifying to Meghan than any headline. Not the screaming headlines, not the faceless tweets, not even the resurfaced photos or shadowy whispers from Hollywood producers. No, this was worse. Harry, once her fiercest defender, the man who had turned his back on the monarchy for her, was now staring at his phone with a look she had never seen before. A look of silent devastation. Because the word video had just entered the conversation, and everything changed. What video? Meghan asked again, her voice cracking now. Harry didn't answer, not because he was ignoring her, but because he didn't know what to say. Because the voice on the phone had only said one line. There's another video, and this time, it's not just a rumor. Then, the call ended. No name, no details, no clarification, just those words. And that meant one thing. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't doctored footage. This wasn't speculation. This was about to become undeniable. The blood drained from Meghan's face. Her mask shattered, for a split second. And in that moment, Harry saw something that chilled him. Not guilt, not remorse. Fear. Real, unfiltered fear. The kind of fear that doesn't come from being falsely accused, but from knowing something very real might finally surface. Harry, she said again, stepping forward slowly. If there's a video, I can explain. Wrong move. That word, explain, set off alarms in Harry's brain. He turned to her sharply. You can explain? He asked, voice low and dangerous. Explain what exactly? Meghan opened her mouth, closed it, breathed in, tried to shift her tone, softer, more intimate, like the Meghan from their early days. It's probably something taken out of context, she said. Maybe I was filmed without my knowledge. I don't know what they're claiming, but if we see it, we... Harry's voice cut through her sentence like a scalpel. He was no longer playing along. Do you know what's on it? He asked. Meghan froze. That was the question, the real question, and she couldn't answer. Because if she said no, and he found out she did, it was over. But if she said yes, it might already be over anyway. The silence stretched like wire pulled taut. Then Harry did something unexpected. He walked past her, calmly, deliberately, and entered his study. Meghan followed him in, her voice suddenly louder, tighter, more desperate. Harry, we need to stay united. They want us divided. Don't give them what they want. He ignored her. He opened his laptop, logged into a secure royal network only he still had access to, searched the encrypted drop location used by former palace operatives. And there it was, a single file, labeled with a date, 2014. Location, Dubai Marina. File type, MP4. Harry hovered his mouse over the thumbnail. A still frame appeared. His stomach turned. Because the woman in the video, long hair, wide sunglasses, bare shoulders, cocktail in hand, looked exactly like Meghan. No makeup, no entourage, no paparazzi smile. Just her laughing. Laughing in a way he hadn't seen in years. And next to her, a man, older, slick, leaning in too close, his hand brushing her thigh. Harry couldn't breathe. Pause it, Meghan said quickly. But he hadn't even hit play. And that told him everything. He looked at her, dead in the eyes. You've seen it before. Meghan's lips quivered. She looked down, and in that moment, her carefully curated image shattered. She whispered, they promised it was destroyed. Harry blinked. Who promised? Meghan shook her head. It doesn't matter. It does, he snapped. Who filmed this? Who paid for it? Who else has it? She started to cry now, but it didn't feel real. It felt like muscle memory. A performance she could not give. They told me it was just for fun, she whispered. A private party. No press. No cameras. I was young. I didn't know they were. Harry stood up. His chair scraped against the floor violently. You didn't know? You didn't know you were being filmed on a yacht with men like that. It wasn't like that. Then what was it, Meghan? And for the first time, she had no words. Because there were none. Not for this. Not anymore. Harry walked past her again, back into the hallway, back into the whirlwind of thoughts that now felt like a prison. She followed him. Please, she begged. We can get ahead of it. Control the damage. I'll make a statement. No, Harry said. You won't. What? He turned. And what she saw in his eyes this time wasn't just pain. It was resolve. I'm not letting you spin this, he said. Not this time. And that was the moment Meghan understood something far more terrifying than any leaked video. She no longer had control over Harry. Not his words. Not his emotions. Not his loyalty. He had crossed the line. And now, she couldn't get him back. So she changed tactics again. She tried the children. Think about Archie, she said softly. Think about Lilibet. Do you want them seeing this one day? Do you want their mother dragged through the mud? You can't let this destroy our family. But Harry didn't react. Not the way she expected. Not the way he always had before. Instead, he said the one thing she never thought he'd say out loud. You already destroyed it. Silence. The words hung there like a guillotine between them. She flinched. Because this wasn't just a marriage anymore. It was a verdict. A reckoning. And the final sentence had just been handed down. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Because Harry had one more question. Who else knows? Meghan tried to play dumb. But it was pointless. About the video? Yes. She hesitated, then answered. Softly. 2 people. Harry's heart raced. Names. She didn't want to say it. But she did. And when she did, Harry staggered back like he'd been hit. Because one of the names was a name he trusted. A name he defended. A name he protected from his family. A name who had helped distribute it. Harry whispered. Why would they do that? And Meghan, broken, whispered back. Because I gave them the wrong reason to trust me. Harry stared at her, eyes empty, and said, without raising his voice, You need to leave this house. Tonight. Meghan gasped. You're kicking me out. I'm protecting my kids. I am their mother. And they'll still have one. He pointed toward the door. Not angrily. Not violently. Just firmly. Like a soldier issuing a command. But before Meghan could say another word, Harry's phone buzzed again. This time it was a message. No sender. Just a link. He clicked it. The screen loaded. The video had been leaked. It was already on the dark web. Trending. Shared in group chats. Clipped into memes. Muted and captioned. The damage was done. Harry looked up at Meghan and said the only thing left to say. This ends now. But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. I want a divorce. But Meghan didn't crumble. She calculated. She didn't scream. She didn't collapse. She didn't beg. She blinked once. Slowly, like a curtain lowering over her soul. Then she straightened her spine, inhaled deeply, and shifted into something terrifyingly familiar. Survival mode. Because this wasn't her first scandal. It wasn't her first threat. And it sure as hell wasn't her first time facing a man who decided she was no longer worth the chaos. Meghan had been here before. And she always came out on top. But this time, it was different. Because the stakes weren't just her brand, her fame, or her social standing. They were her marriage, her children, and a secret clause buried deep in the ironclad legal agreements she had once insisted upon, agreements that could now come back to haunt her. So no, she wasn't going to crumble. She was going to counterattack. And the first step? Control the narrative. Because no matter how damning the video was, no matter how convincing the file Harry had seen, Meghan understood one critical thing. In this era, facts don't matter as much as framing. If she could frame the leak as misogynistic, as racist, as part of a systemic effort to demonize her, she might just survive. She might even, God help her, profit. But she'd have to move fast. Because Harry was already pulling away. His footsteps echoed through the hallway as he disappeared into the other wing of the mansion, where his private security channel and legal advisory line sat waiting. Meghan knew what that meant. He was calling his lawyers. And if he got the first strike in, the media coverage would tilt his way. He'd be the betrayed prince, the heartbroken father, the naive royal who was lied to, used, humiliated. And she'd be the liar, the manipulator, the social climber, the yacht girl. That label, the one she fought for years to erase, was now trending worldwide. Hashtag Yacht Girl Meghan. Her hands clenched involuntarily. Not again, she whispered to herself. Not like this. She paced the kitchen like a panther trapped in a glass cage. Her mind raced faster than her feet. She needed a team. Now. But she couldn't call the usual names. Most of them were already ghosting her. Too risky. Too exposed. She needed someone who owed her. Someone smart. Someone ruthless. And she knew exactly who. She pulled out her burner phone. The one she used only when she didn't want her activity traced. Typed a number from memory. 3 rings. A voice answered. Cool. Male. British. You shouldn't be calling me, he said. Meghan didn't bother with pleasantries. It's happening, she said. I need containment. Immediate. A pause. Then. How bad? Video. Documents. Leaked. He's asking for a divorce. Another pause. This one longer. Sharper. Heavy. Then, like a bomb dropping. Okay. You need to listen very carefully. She did. For the next 5 minutes, the voice walked her through a sequence of steps. Some legal. Some PR. Some less traceable. When the call ended, Meghan felt 2 things. Terror. And adrenaline. Because now she had a plan. But here's the part she hadn't accounted for. Harry was 3 steps ahead. While she was coordinating spin, Harry had done something she never saw coming. He had called his father. Not the palace switchboard. Not the press office. Not even William. He called King Charles directly. And Charles picked up on the first ring. Harry. The voice was measured. Cold. But not angry. Just prepared. I assume this isn't a social call, the king said. Harry didn't waste time. She lied to me, he said. And now the whole world knows. There was a silence on the other end. But it wasn't surprised silence. It was the silence of a man who had known and had waited. I'm sorry you had to see it like this, Charles finally said. Harry's throat tightened. You knew? I suspected. Why didn't you tell me? Because you wouldn't have believed me. Harry closed his eyes. Because it was true. He wouldn't have. He hadn't. And now? He was the last to know. And the first to be broken by it. Charles's voice came through again. We need to meet. Privately. Without press. Without staff. Just you and me. Harry nodded. Where? There was a pause. Then Charles gave a location. An estate in Gloucestershire. Old. Quiet. Secure. Come tomorrow, he said. And then added, with something strangely tender in his voice. Bring the children. Harry blinked. Why? You'll understand when you get here. The line went dead. Back in Montecito, Meghan was in motion. She'd already activated a former Netflix director she had once flirted with the idea of collaborating with, now working in crisis brand rehab. He owed her. She was calling in that debt. She'd also begun drafting her version of events. Something that would frame her as the misunderstood wife, smeared by powerful royal forces, the victim of yet another campaign of misogyny. She even crafted the beginnings of a viral tweet thread. When a woman refuses to be silent, they call her dangerous. When she owns her past, they weaponize it. When she marries power, they strip her humanity. I will not be erased. Not now. Not ever. The last line, that was for Harry, but it was also for the public. The fans. The base who had built her into a symbol. The plan was coming together. But what Meghan didn't know, Harry had already secured emergency custody protections through his lawyers. He hadn't filed for full custody. Not yet. But he had put legal blocks in place. To prevent Meghan from taking the children abroad without his consent. To freeze their shared accounts. To trigger dormant clauses in their royal separation agreement. Clauses she had insisted be buried in the fine print. And those clauses? They had consequences. Meghan's eyes were scanning headlines now. The video was everywhere. Clipped, cropped, muted, overanalyzed. Some claimed it was fake. Others insisted it was confirmed. Still others said the man in the video had been seen at multiple yacht parties in the early 2010s, some even connected to the Epstein network. It was spiraling fast. Too fast. And one DM made her blood run cold. An anonymous message. Untraceable. With only 2 words. You're next. She dropped the phone. Her hands trembled because she recognized the phrasing. She'd used that phrasing back when she had leverage. And now it was being used on her. Suddenly, the mansion didn't feel safe. The windows felt too open, the security system too vulnerable, the walls too thin. She grabbed her handbag, not to leave, to pack, to move into her backup house, the one she bought under a shell company in Bel Air. She had planned it for a different kind of emergency. Now, it felt prophetic. But she didn't get far, because as she reached the hallway, she saw Harry, standing by the front door, coat on, suitcase in hand, and Archie standing beside him. "Where are you going?" Meghan asked. Harry looked at her. "London." Meghan blinked. "You're taking Archie?" "Yes." "You can't just." Harry pulled out a document. Signed. Sealed. Legal. Temporary custody permission. Triggered by breach of trust clauses. Co-signed by an emergency family court judge. Her knees buckled. "You filed that without even telling me?" Harry didn't flinch. "You lied to me for 5 years." The front door opened. Security waited outside. Harry stepped forward. And then, just as he was about to leave, he turned back and said the one thing that shattered Meghan completely. "And if that second video comes out, I won't be coming back." Then he walked out and left Meghan alone, in a mansion that suddenly felt like a tomb. But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. The call Meghan made wasn't to a lawyer. It wasn't to her agent, her stylist, or even her crisis PR fixer. It was to someone far more dangerous. Someone who operated in the shadows. Someone who had once scrubbed her digital past so clean that not even Palace Forensics could reconstruct it. Someone who didn't ask questions, he solved them. He went by a single name in her contacts list. Foxglove. The line rang once. Then silence. Not a greeting. Not even a hello. Meghan spoke carefully. "It's time." Another pause. Then a low voice, unrecognizable in pitch or origin, responded. "How bad?" She exhaled. "The footage is out. Harry's walking. Charles is circling. Hollywood's turning. I need full spectrum lockdown. Everything." The voice didn't hesitate. 3 protocols. 1 condition. "What condition?" "You vanish for 48 hours. Meghan blinked. "I can't disappear right now. You want this buried or not?" She hesitated. "I don't want to look guilty." "You already look guilty." That hit her like a slap. But she didn't react. Because he was right. Her entire brand had always depended on appearance. Not truth. Not lies. Control. And that control was slipping fast. "Fine," she muttered. "Activate it. I'll be off-grid by morning." The line cut off. No goodbyes. No confirmation. Just action. That's what Foxglove was known for. Within minutes, her backup phone, secured through an encrypted Swiss provider, began lighting up with notifications. Some were alerts. Some were suggested takedown requests. Others were social media patterns tracking where the video had reached, who was amplifying it, and, most chillingly, who had viewed it privately and said nothing. One name on the private viewer list froze her blood. Oprah. She hadn't called. She hadn't texted. She hadn't said a word. Which meant one thing. Meghan had been dropped. Quietly. Efficiently. Strategically. It was already happening. Her inner circle, those smiling photo op friends and Instagram allies, were turning into ghosts. Radio silence. Even Serena hadn't responded to her last message. She opened her DM thread. Message status, seen. No reply. Not even a blue heart. Nothing. Meghan dropped her phone onto the granite countertop and buried her face in her hands. She felt it now. The void. The one she had spent years building walls against. The one that comes when fame begins to rot from the inside. The one where silence isn't absence, it's judgment. But even as her world shrank, her mind accelerated. She still had a chance to regain control. Not of Harry, not of the marriage, but of the narrative. And to do that, she needed to stay one step ahead of the media storm. So she opened her laptop and began typing a message, not to her team, not to a friend, to a reporter, a specific one. Veronica Bale, BuzzFeed's former royal correspondent turned Substack queen. Savvy, fierce, strategic, and known for one thing above all else: burning bridges for clicks. Meghan's email was brief. Exclusive offer. First rights. My words, unedited. Let's talk, off record. She knew Veronica couldn't resist. Within 10 minutes, the reply came. Prove it's really you. Then we talk. Meghan attached a time-stamped photo. Veronica's next message was brutal and honest. You get one shot. Make it count. Meghan knew what that meant. She had one chance to frame her story before the tabloids twisted it, before the second video dropped, before the palace issued their formal statement. But before she could start typing the draft, her security alert pinged. Unauthorized access. Marblewood Server Vault 03. She froze. That server held her private communications archive, backed up documents, receipts, burner logs. It was encrypted. It was hidden. And yet someone had breached it. She clicked the log. One word flashed on her screen. Extracting, followed by another. Downloading. Then, in real time, she watched as files were pulled from her private archive, messages she'd sent years ago, to agents, to producers, to friends, to people who were never meant to be linked to her public narrative. Among them, an unredacted contract from 2015, a signed agreement between Meghan Markle and a hospitality entertainment company based in the UAE. Undisclosed payment. Undisclosed appearance fee. NDA attached. It had never been leaked. Never even discussed. Until now. And now someone had it. She slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding. Because this wasn't just a leak anymore. It was an infiltration. A full-blown takedown. And it was moving faster than she could respond. She grabbed her essentials, jewelry, cash, passport, and stuffed them into a Louis Vuitton duffel bag she kept ready in her walk-in closet. She'd need to leave tonight. Vanish. Go dark before the footage hit mainstream networks. But as she zipped the bag, her phone buzzed again. One new message. From an unknown number. The text was simple. Check The Guardian. She opened the site. And there it was. Front page. Banner headline. Palace sources confirm. Harry prepares legal separation. And beneath it, an even more damning subhead. Royal advisors release statement on new protocols involving Duke's children. Insiders suggest custody concerns. She sat down. Hard. The article confirmed what she feared most. The palace was now backing Harry, and they were framing the separation not as a scandal, but as a protection measure for the royal lineage. A preemptive move to shield the Sussex children from future disgrace. And worst of all, they were winning the public. The comment sections, normally filled with anti-Charles bile and Meghan defenders, were shifting. People were confused, shocked. Some still defended her, but others were starting to say the one thing Meghan couldn't afford. Maybe Harry was the victim all along. She dropped her phone. And then, for the first time in years, Meghan Markle panicked. Really panicked. No cameras. No assistants. No filters. Just her. Alone. Cornered. Watching the empire she built turn to ash. But she hadn't seen the worst yet. Because across the Atlantic, in a candlelit study behind closed palace doors, Princess Anne sat reviewing a final document. Not a file. Not a video. A sworn affidavit. From a former associate of Meghan's. Dated. Signed. Stamped. And Anne's last words before she handed it to her assistant? Release it when the second video drops. The assistant nodded. And with a quiet breath, and whispered. She had her chance. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Enter the unexpected royal ally. Someone with nothing to lose, nothing left to prove, and no reason to protect Meghan Markle. Her name? Princess Anne. The Princess Royal. The steel spine of the monarchy. The one royal who never craved headlines, but always knew exactly where the power lay. And now, she had finally stepped out of the shadows. Not for revenge, but for preservation. Because Anne didn't believe in theatrics. She believed in structure, in loyalty, in duty, and what she saw unfolding with Meghan. It wasn't just a scandal. It was an infection, one that had crept into the heart of the monarchy and quietly poisoned everything it touched. Harry, the crown's credibility. The Sussex children, even the Queen's legacy. Enough was enough. So Anne did what no one else had dared to do. She launched her own private investigation. Silent. Independent, legally protected. For 2 years, she had been watching Meghan from behind the curtain, studying patterns, tracking associates, listening to whispers most of the firm dismissed as tabloid chatter. But Anne wasn't interested in gossip. She wanted facts. And now she had them. Documents, statements, receipts. And most devastatingly, witnesses. Witnesses who once benefited from Meghan's rise. Now silenced, overlooked, paid off. until and offered something they couldn't resist. Immunity, testimony that could be sealed unless needed, protection for their identities. And in exchange,